started? Do we all? Oh, now she's recording. I'm going to say that one more time. Onboarding process starts with a signed management agreement. It ends when the property is on the market, being marketed for rent.
Yeah.
And I heard you say all
Orders
are complete.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because sometimes we do start marketing and there's
Yeah.
a few.
Yes,
If there's like a, I'm gonna drive it thing out or something, we'll go ahead and sell it. But if there's major repairs, we'll wait.
Okay. What are the main pieces between these two things? And we're talking about who owns them yet? What are the main things that have to be done? Site management agreement, introductory call, like the handoff call, like the bridge between sales and operations. By the way, this is a classic problem every single business has. Sales to operations. That transition from sales to operations is always not perfectly smooth, right? Why? Can we talk about this a little bit? This is really important. Why is this almost always an issue with businesses?
It's two different mindsets.
Okay.
Yes, it's true. Somebody told me they feel like we work as two separate companies.
Okay. Challenges in a handoff are less than two different mindsets. What do you mean, Les?
Your salespeople and operations people typically have two different frames of reference in their processes.
Yes, and they are.
All right, so salespeople, I'm trying to get the sale, I'm looking for the next sale. I've got pipeline and everything. I'm all driven towards that goal. On the operations side of it, they're process minded, looking at the granular pieces of this. What parts got missed? What do I need to do to affect the transition, right?
So one way to say this is the salespeople are yes people and the operations people are no people.
I've heard that a lot.
Right? And so it's really tough for someone that's like, that you've been courting and dating and telling, finding out, hey, are we the right fit for you? We think we're the right fit. Yeah, I think you're the right fit. Okay, let's give this a try. Okay, I'm going to trust you. I'm taking a risk. I'm taking a chance. Okay, we'll take a chance on you too. This is going to be great.
Yoo-hoo!
Yeah.
And then they're at the altar. Like I've never met you, but yes, I'm about to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was perfect. That was
Yeah.
perfect. Glad Rebecca has this recorded. So then the groom gets presented at the altar, and he's not really smiling that big.
Well, there's a guy in the audience in the congregation going, I object to this man. That's the operations guy.
Really?
Looking for the holes in there.
Okay. So operations is the audience and the groom. Who's the preacher? I think this is gonna break down eventually.
That's you.
I'm the preacher. I'm like, you're just gonna make this work together. You're gonna make this work, right? All right. So, and I'm holding our operations handbook, our owner handbook.
Yeah.
Like, did you read this? No, but I'm here. Did you read this? Okay, so there's two different mindsets. So the intro call is really important.
I think another challenge is a lack of communication,
What? Okay.
Between the two departments.
sales and operations.
These are classic problems. These are not specific to Mark Robert problems. Okay, any other challenges in the classic handoff dilemma? I'm sure ChatGPT can give us 10 others, but yeah, these are.
Well, if I could say one more thing, I'm sorry, hijack, but
Fine.
typically in the sales part, there's expectations that are set that the sales operations section will have no clue about. Probably goes to lack of communication. So you've got this expectation set, and then the sales operations team has no idea what that expectation was.
I think it's a classic difference of priority too.
For sure.
Is this fair?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe lofty expectations are set, and then operations is all about, "Now, I'm gonna have to manage your expectations here, I'm gonna have." Say, the classic. So this scenario, how it's played out historically in the company before we got bigger. Was I was sales and Rich was operations. And occasionally Rich would come into my office and he'd be like. Can we talk about this owner you just? And I'd be like, and I'd be like, yeah. Then after we talk for a while, you know, once the foot starts kicking, you know, things are getting better. But
Notice the small.
so that's it. So salesperson wants everything to be great, like, yeah, we can do that. And their operations person's like, no, we're not gonna do that. It needs to fit in the box. So this intro call is really important because somebody wants to feel. Okay, so throughout this entire process, what matters most, honestly, is how the owner feels about this service they're getting. At the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters. Okay, because if they don't feel great about the service we're giving, at the end of the day, we have to own that. And that's going to affect our reputation. It's going to affect whether other people want to hire us because we don't make people feel good. And guess what? Operations doesn't want to hear about how people feel. They want to hear about whether it fits in the box, right?
It's so funny because that customer, remember, that felt I passed off because he felt like there was lack of communication, didn't know what was going on with this. His tenant was moving out, and Rich came back to me and he said, I talked to that guy, and by the way, we told him, you know, there had not been a breakdown in communication. We told him this day, like he had been completely filled in, and I said, that doesn't matter if he doesn't feel like it.
Yes. The only thing that matters is how the person feels.
To an extent, right? And then they don't feel a certain way that doesn't fit within our process, though, we can't accommodate.
Yes, and that matters because we're only gonna go for win-win.
Yeah,
So we have to feel great about it too,
yes.
okay? But we are selling a feeling of low stress. We're selling a feeling of confidence. That's what we're selling. And that's what, and sales is doing a great job conveying that feeling because we just broke our all-time record. And so operations in the intro call needs to accept that great feeling and support it and reinforce it as things start moving forward. So there needs to be a high level, well, I'm not going to say what it needs. Whatever needs to happen to cause that feeling to happen at this point is what needs to happen. Now, whether that is, the process is so amazing. By the way, I once refinanced through Rocket Mortgage, which is a Quicken mortgage company. I spoke to almost nobody the entire time. You're from the mortgage world, but I was thrilled. I was absolutely thrilled. I didn't want to pick up the phone, and I didn't have to pick up the phone because they overwhelmed me with really aesthetically pleasing, very clear, easy to understand prompts on my screen with very good over communicating about exactly where everything was at, exactly what I should expect, and exactly incremental updates before I wanted them. And I was thrilled. I was absolutely thrilled. And guess what? Quicken Mortgage won because they didn't have to pay anybody to talk to me. They talked to like one person. And I'm a complicated like borrower. Like I had lots of stuff going on.
You're lucky you got through it then. Because I know other drivers, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, I sailed it through. So anyway, that may be that maybe I'm the rare exception and everybody hates them. But the point is, I felt really good about the process. So this intro call needs to reinforce the feeling, and it doesn't necessarily need a lot of human touch, but it needs to create the feeling. So we need to be committed that the feeling stays high from sales to operations. And we need to agree that that's the outcome, and whatever needs to happen to affect that outcome is what
I
needs
have
to
a
happen.
question.
Go ahead.
So, me and Riley have been doing the intro calls, so we don't want to be doing that because we want it to be an operations then, so that it feels like there is a handoff, because I don't know, after our intro call, I think then it goes into what lock, I'm not gonna go down the list, because we don't jump ahead, but is there a call somewhere with operations and after that, the intro call?
Okay, let's put a pin in that, come back to it. Sales is doing the intro call.
Is that the best thing? Is that the right way to achieve the objective?
So let's, the objective is what?
The handoff,
Yeah, but what's the objective? What, yeah, a high.
so we understand that they're going into operations.
What's the feeling they need to have at the handoff?
Confidence.
Yeah, confidence, feel secure in the process.
Yep, high confidence. High trust.
No,
That-
we're supposed to go into what?
High confidence and high trust.
Sometimes an extension of that high confidence, high trust is like, well, I need a single point of contact. Well, you actually don't need a single point of contact. You need high confidence and high trust. And you think a single point of contact is what you need, but maybe it is what they need. So we'll explore that, right? What else? Anything else about this intro call? We've got the objective. This is a really important piece. It is the handoff
From sales to operations.
Okay,
The expectation for what else is to come. I think, so they kind of know what, and they're always asking,
Next
what's next, what's next?
Yeah, I think when that handoff call happens, I mean, Karen and I explained to the owners what is gonna happen with the inspection and, that they're gonna get, at least I know anyway, you knew as well, that they're gonna get a ready report and that there's gonna be estimates on there and that, you know, we set those expectations, but I think going back over them again with the operations, talking them through exactly what's gonna happen.
if they hear it from someone else,
Yeah.
you're saying if they hear it from someone on the operations side, that's strong.
Yeah, I think also we're focused on more than just that. So you're gonna get probably a higher, level overview of what's to come. So then, you know, operations can get a little more granular on what the next
Specific steps.
what's gonna happen with the ready report, what's gonna be included in that.
I don't know, I feel like if we, by talking to us more too, I feel, and it's okay, they start coming to us for everything, almost like everything, anything, you know?
So,
They don't know who else to go to, but if they meet another person too, it kind of opens up to like, oh, I do have this team around me. Sometimes I feel like they're trying to treat me like the property manager.
Okay, so we're going for a feeling of confidence and trust. What are the two parts of trust? For the speed of trust,
I'm not gonna.
character and confidence. You can't expect someone to trust you. You can be the most honest person in the world, but if you're an idiot, you're not worthy of their trust. That's the reality. You could be the smartest person in the world, but you're just out for yourself. You don't have the character, you don't have the integrity. You got ulterior motives, you're wolf in sheep's clothing. You're not worthy of people's trust. So the customer journey of feeling confidence and trust largely comes down to confidence and character. Well, how do you establish character? Well, you be a good person, and we're all good people here. If we weren't good people, we wouldn't be here, right? How do you establish confidence?
Do what you say you're gonna do when you say you're gonna do it.
Thank you.
Do what you say you're gonna do when.
Okay, why are we talking about this? Because trust is built, trust is a process. Displaying confidence requires multiple points of contact with the person you're building trust with. Every single time you say you're gonna do something and then you do it on time, the way you said you were gonna do it, or early, then you put another brick in the wall of trust, right? And eventually that wall gets really strong. Every time you don't do what you said you were gonna do, or you don't do it by the time you said you were gonna do it, which is the same thing, you didn't do what you said you were gonna do, and trust breaks down, and trust is constantly moving, one way or the other. Okay. So the reason I mention that is because if you set expectations in an intro call and it doesn't happen the way you just said it would happen early in a relationship, right after you sign someone, how damaging is that? That's super damaging.
So,
In fact, if we could design this process perfectly, the only goal was to build trust, we would give ourselves like 5 layups, right? Right at the beginning of the relationship. We would say, hey, we're going to do this. And then we would do it better and faster than we said. Okay, next we're going to do this. And then we would do it better and faster than we said. Now we're going to do this. Like we'd make it really easy for ourselves. And we'd make 5 solid deposits right in the beginning of the relationship. And then people would be like, dude, they've already said they were going to do 5 things in 3 days. And they did them in 1 day. And they did them better than I expected. And I have clear evidence that it's done. Right? That would be a really powerful way to start the relationship and build trust. Let's talk about the opposite. Do you guys have examples of the opposite where we brought in a client and then we like started damaging trust right out of the gates? Has that happened recently?
Well, it goes back to over promising and under delivering,
Thank you.
So if sales, and I'm not using a particular example, but if a salesperson says, yeah, we'll be able to do that in 2 days, not realizing it's not possible, when we're able to actually schedule it in 3 days, which still is good, we under delivered, right? We thought we would be able to do it faster, so then you're already starting to diminish that trust.
Thank you for bringing that up.
And it wasn't necessarily because of any fault, it was just not knowing where to set the expectation.
One thing that Tara and Riley do really well, I'm trying to think of a specific example, is even while they're dating the client, even while they're doing everything that like they're in the say yes period of courting the client, they're introducing the right expectations that they know operations will be able to meet. That's super important. That not only the operations will be able to meet, but they'll be able to exceed. That's really important. Under promising and over delivering.
And by over promising, we're taking you guys out of your comfort zone.
This stopping you double.
are you wrong?
Can we please look for other ways of challenging each other to level up that isn't so dangerous? We can't gamble with the owner's trust. We don't want to gamble with the owner's trust. We can gamble with other things. We can gamble internally and say like, hey, we promised this in 3 days. Can you do this in 1 day? That's the kind of like challenging internally, like challenge the field team to go from 2 inspections a day to 4. Wow, that's impossible. You couldn't possibly do that. Well, really? Like what? Like, okay, well, let's shoot for 4, and then if we land at 3, for our next step.
Remember, 1 level at a time. You can't jump to the top of the stairs.
Yeah. At the same time, at the same time, a really inspiring vision of what could be possible it could be a powerful motivator too. And not that we expect to get there overnight. Okay, intro call, big step. That's a big step. What's another step?
I'm going in order in my head about complex, ready.
So let's call it the rent ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, the rent ready inspection.
And all of the pertinent tasks. Okay, what about that? What is the primary objective during the rent ready process?
Get the house ready for the tenants.
Get the house ready,
Set them up for success.
set them up for success. What's the primary objective during the rent ready process?
Make sure they meet our standards.
What?
Make sure they meet our standards.
Okay, what's the primary objective during the rent ready process?
I'm looking for Amanda. Give me a.
The answer always is, how's the owner to feel
No.
Oh,
Oh, well.
they're really happy about the service they're getting. Okay, that is always the overarching objective for everything going on in the onboarding process.
Show them we do a thorough job.
So whatever we can do to display competence and character, to build confidence and trust, that is the goal. There's also a tertiary goal, which is to find out, is this really a win-win relationship? Because if it's not a win-win relationship, now's our opportunity to exit gracefully, right?
We've had clients, I've seen.
Clients, well, actually, a guy called me like 3 months ago and he said, hey, Mark, I'm a recent new client. I don't remember his name, but he wrote us a Yelp review. I'm a recent new client and this is a good call. And I said, great. And he said, I just wanted to call. You probably don't, it's probably a rare call, but I wanted to call and tell you that you guys did everything you promised you would do. And I'm really happy. I said, that's great. You would do the same for me. In fact, could you do me a favor and go on Yelp? He's like, you want me to go on Yelp right for you? I said, yep, I do. He's like, doing it today. Okay. So high confidence and trust. Rent ready. So, okay. So the secondary objectives are ensure property meets our standards. What else?
just setting the owner and the future resident up for a positive experience. You're setting them up for investing in things that are going to be worthwhile.
I think that partially goes back to the win-win relationship and making sure that that owner is under the right mindset of investing in the property and making the yesterday. It's just a
Susan said the bad words. Susan said the bad words.
Yeah.
Yeah, I told her I didn't.
I wrote-
we were a good fit.
I did a video about that.
I'm sorry.
You gotta run?
Just give me 5 minutes.
Yeah, you're fine.
I could put a needle in that issue.
Oh, yeah. You're
I'm
fine.
recording it too, so maybe she sent it to you.
Yeah. Ensure property meets our standards. So high confidence trust, the secondary objectives for the rent ready process, ensure property meets standards, setting up positive future experience for the owner and the tenant. Are those the main things that we're doing during rent ready?
We're trying to address problems before they come up.
Okay. Yeah, proactively address. What about the business case? What are the business objectives of us running this business for the owner?
Is that being proactive?
Not just a positive experience, but let's start talking about money now. What are we doing?
making sure that their property will rent for the highest possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's call it, we're setting up the revenue maximizing potential for the property. Because if we do the rent ready process effectively, we're not only gonna have a short vacancy, it's gonna look beautiful, it's gonna look amazing, but we're also gonna have a property that rents for more. Okay, so we're gonna talk about low vacancy, high rent. Okay, do we agree those are objectives here?
And when we talk to owners about investing in their property, there's a business case that talks about.
What about retention? So Riley's talking about setting up a positive future experience for both the owner and the tenant. If the tenant has a positive experience, future experience, are they more likely to renew their lease? So low vacancy, higher rent, and higher retention, all of these are outcomes of doing an effective rent ready process.
Hopefully lower maintenance costs.
Lower drama, lower maintenance costs, lower disruption, higher, better experience.
Yeah. Which is positive for us because it's less resources to be dealing with. You know, if someone moves in and immediately within the first month has, hey, you know, I know
Yeah.
this is broken, I know this is broken, can you guys come, you know, and it's a lot more difficult to deal with those things when the tenant's there.
If a resident has 10 maintenance requests, separate appointments in the first 90 days, is that cost effective for the owner? Can an effective rent ready process help minimize the possibility that's gonna happen? Yeah, absolutely. So this is great. Lower vacancy, higher rent, higher retention of the resident, and lower maintenance costs. These are all outcomes of an effective rent ready process.
So this comes back to educating the resident because, or I'm sorry, the owner because, and helping them understand the why behind this, because I just talked to someone the other day who felt like his other property manager in California, when he onboarded the property, they gave him this laundry list of things that had to be done, and he felt like they were just taking a kickback on it and making money on it. And they probably did this to every property, and even though the park was clean and even cleaned again. So helping them understand why and so that they're not drawing their own conclusions about why we're asking for them to invest in the property is all about that feeling and that setting the expectation.
Okay, I love what Riley just brought up, which is a true principle, which is if an owner makes up their own conclusions in their own mind, we failed in setting a really clear picture in advance. So we could take extreme ownership of owners irrationally drawing unfair conclusions against us. Instead of playing the victim in that scenario, we can choose to feel empowered that we allowed that to happen because we did not communicate very clearly in advance what they should have been thinking, what the rules for success are, what the reasons for the protocol will be. It's fantastic. Are these two connected, the intro call and the rent ready? Again, if we're in a process of preserving a feeling of high confidence and trust, and we know that comes when we do what we say we're going to do, when you say you're going to do it. Does that help us understand that maybe part of the intro call is educating the owner about the importance of the next step they're about to engage with?
I think the intro call is to introduce the owner to the next person who's going to be helping them through the process, for the next people, you know, and then setting the expectations, setting the scheduling the rent ready, right? And then setting the expectation about what's going to happen in the rent ready. And then when the rent ready inspection is sent to them, it is, I feel we really need a call to go over the rent ready with them and explain through what the numbers mean, what the reason is, and then further drill down on the reasons and the reasons behind investing in these things now. And try to get them to just come in and say yes right then and there.
So part of the intro call is scheduling the rent ready and teaching about the importance of investing in your property.
Yeah, and just educating them on here's what they're gonna look for, and here's our expectations. Because the more you prepare someone for that, then the more they know what to expect and you're not caught off guard.
And we send them something in writing about what our rent ready expectations are. It's safe to say that they should be reading that. We shouldn't have to go over it again and phone call.
I put it at the beginning, like, so like, it tells you what we've been looking for, we come to your home and everything, and it seems like they're still, and then you'll come, and they'll be like, yeah, I got that ready, what was this doing? I can go in there, you know.
Okay, let's have something.
Almost think that, what does the VAC stand for? in that area?
Vacancy, lower vacancy.
Retention and stuff, that portion needs to be an intro call. Cause that sets the tone, that's the why behind the what, the red is the what, the intro is the why. Here's why you're gonna get this report, this is why we're gonna recommend things on that report. Because we wanna, we wanna increase your rent, we wanna make sure the retention's high, minimize your maintenance costs. If that makes any sense.
So teaching about the importance of rent ready investing, which are,
I think that example you gave is one that we should always point out to them.
Which is,
Is it more cost effective to get all these little nitpicky things done right now while your property's vacant? Or wait for your tenant to move in and make a bunch of maintenance requests?
that you would then be frustrated about and say, well, it's just a rental, tell them to deal with it, I'm gonna say no. Because we've seen that happen too, right? We're not getting away from the reality that, we're looking for the highest quality residents in this marketplace. Why? Because if you secure a high quality resident that stays for years, guess what? That was a massive home run. In order to secure a high quality resident, we want the property to attract a high quality resident. And after they live there, we want to meet any reasonable expectation that a quality resident would have of the home, period. Doesn't matter that 3 of the screens weren't there when you bought the house. A quality resident is going to want functional screens on every single window that opens, period, including a rolling screen door on the back patio. So you can't get away from, if we want to attract a quality resident, we can't sort of wiggle around the fact that the property just is a rental and it's not, so you're gonna have to deal with it later or you can deal with it now.
We're not looking to get it.
And if you deal with it later, not only are you still gonna have to deal with it, but it's gonna be
More
difficult
expensive.
and more expensive, but then you also run the risk that you lost some potential quality tenants that came, looked at the property and decided against it without giving you the opportunity to say, hey, yeah, I will rent it if you fix this.
That's right.
Because if that's what you're hoping for, is that either someone doesn't care or that if they do care, they're gonna give you the opportunity to fix it, and now you're fixing it in the middle of them trying to win.
No, not gonna happen. And even if you duped them and it looked good enough on the surface and they moved in and then they had to have 6 maintenance requests in the first 3 months, how likely are you to retain this amazing resident? Not likely. Okay, intro call, rent ready. What's the next thing? Execution.
Execute on the action items.
Rent
ready before it
turn the property.
Yeah.
Turn the property and start marketing. Well, because that's our end right here. That's when onboarding is done, is marketing started. So really our last major step is turn the property quickly, start marketing quickly, like get it show ready. Is it okay? Let's be clear about this. Is it to get it show ready as quickly as possible? Because let's think about this like a business. The owner loses money until what happens? Vacancy loss is how much per day? $50 to $100 a day. The owner's losing. How important is it that we get these things done quickly? Super important. How important is it that before a 3-day holiday weekend, if we could get a rent ready report to the owner on Friday instead of Tuesday, that we do that? I mean, that could, those 3 or 4 days that we don't lose because we're on it can justify it, saving, like it justifies part of the fee that we're charging the owner because they just saved that amount of time. Now, owners underestimate, they undervalue the time, the value of time that you save. We see that all the time when an owner decides to do their own rent ready work, right? it can often take them 2 months to get their property ready when it could have taken us 2 or maybe 3 weeks on a heavy turn. So, so another important thing that we can do through this process, and maybe it's during the rent ready, right? Is educating an owner a little bit more about time. Look, we recognize that your vacancy cost is $50 to $100 a day. We recognize that you could, in your spare time, the next 4 weekends, knock this stuff out. Or you can look at this like a business and allow us to turn this in 10 days or less and get you that additional revenue more quickly. And the important deliverable here is we have different stages, right? We call something show ready, and then we also call it move-in ready. What are the differences?
Show ready means
Let's
the
put on
property
a
is
picture.
good enough to let somebody go look at it, but not quite ready for them.
Sometimes it'll need like a touch of.
A seat stopper in the picture
Yeah.
doesn't matter
Yeah.
until they move in, right? It doesn't work.
It's extremely important that we get a property show ready as fast as possible. Because it's unlikely someone's gonna lease a home, make a decision to lease a property if they haven't walked through it. And so getting it to show ready status, in fact, this is one of the nuances of really thinking about this like a business. I'm gonna point a situation out and you tell me what the ideal scenario is. Let's say we have to decide when we're gonna clean the home. Is a property show ready before it's cleaned?
No.
Absolutely not. But what if we're gonna do a ton of work at that property? Should we schedule the cleaning at the end of a 3-week turn? Because we're waiting on some custom blinds to come. That's gonna take 3 weeks. But we know the guys that go install those blinds are gonna make a mess. Because let's be honest, how many times does a handyman pick up after themselves? Now, we've got an exception with BT Property Services. These guys are amazing. But would you wait and schedule that showing after the blinds come 3 weeks later? Or here's your 2 scenarios. Or would you pay for cleaning twice? Once at 1 week now, and then once at 3 weeks from now. What would
Pay for twice.
you would actually pay for cleaning twice?
I was thinking that you could at least do a touch of.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. We should be lining up our entire process to get a property show ready as fast as possible. And the show ready experience is they come to the property, the front yard looks amazing. The approach to the front door is flawless. The property looks very clean inside because a prospective resident makes an emotional connection with the property in the first 90 seconds. They already know. And they use process of elimination. They're looking at 5 properties that day. They don't even know why necessarily. They're not connecting, but they saw the cobwebs. They saw where it's really dirty, where there used to be a doormat right at the front. They see that there's a stain in the carpet in the living room, and then they already know this doesn't measure up against the last part. They're not looking at the bones of the house. They're having an emotional experience.
And the pool's clear.
And the pool has to be clear.
Every pool.
Okay, turn property to show ready. Are these the main steps? Intro call, rent ready, turn property to show ready ASAP, because then marketing starts. Is that right? What's the main objective of turning the property?
Affecting the repairs.
What's the main objective to turning the property?
Making the owner feel like we're taking care of them, taking care of the property.
That's good.
The answer. Yeah.
Step out last time. It is to do what you say you're gonna do before you said you would do it. We don't wanna sandbag all our processes, but we wanna be dang sure that when we're making promises to new clients, that we're doing them because trust is built over time. Yes, Brad.
When we put together a rent ready checklist and it's approved and it goes to Les and his team to get completed, how do we keep track of all those items and once they are completed.
we create a work order for each grouping of items. Like there's general repairs, flooring, cleaning, all that.
So
And each section has a work order that's generated for it. We have a team member who monitors that process, Trish or Joan. Joan's on the turn side, Trish is on the ready, so Trish is ready. They're monitoring that, they're creating their dates, that they've got, they tag it with certain dates that they can let out, sure. I don't think.
So,
So we don't do that.
so when those items get completed, they get checked off as a task in property mill.
No,
No.
they don't get checked off as a task, we just. Mel tells us it's completed, right? I think what you're trying to get at, stop me if I'm wrong, is who then goes back in and verifies that all the items are completed.
Actually, what I was getting at is I'm trying to think of ways that the owners, they like a high amount of touch and communication. It seems like if they, that process I know is gonna take a while no matter what.
So
Right. So,
when, I don't know when the process has happened, I'm sorry to interrupt. But when the owner has been put into the system under property mill, they have access to this.
okay.
They have total
Great, that's what I'm
visibility.
getting at.
See the work orders, they can see the actual chats that are in the work orders if they want.
So they can monitor the progress of.
Is that true?
No,
It's not true.
no. And this has been something that we've gone back and forth with.
Yes, it's not true. The owners cannot see exactly what's going on. All they can see are what?
Work orders.
Bills.
No,
In the beginning, with the rent ready, they do not see the work orders.
Ah,
Owner visibility is
so
turned
only
on.
in turns.
If we send messages to the owners.
what the owner does see is what, Rebecca? What does the owner see during the rent ready work order process?
We had a communication before that it would be best to turn off owner notification for all the projects created on Melts because there's gonna be a bunch of them. So normally we would only reach out to the owner if we needed an approval for something that they're not aware of on the tracker. I mean, on the actual sheet that they have approved, because there's a difference on the price.
And why did we make that decision? What was going on?
At that time, I think it was Richard, Diane, and Iris who discussed about it. And it's because we don't want owners to get multiple notifications of something that they have already approved of during the rent ready.
There was frustration, upset, confusion, unnecessary communication, unnecessary loss of trust. Because in that case, it was determined at that time, we can revisit this topic, that the more communication we gave the owners, the more they felt like they had to get involved and manage this process.
Yeah.
And what the nature of the relationship that we're trying to inspire with the owner is that we are a competent business manager. In some cases, when you give too much information too frequently, the implication is what? You need to take action with this information, or you need to manage me more in a micro level on this communication. So there's a real balance between giving the owner enough validation that we did what we said we were going to do, and they know where things are at, without fostering an unhealthy dynamic.
What you liked about Rocket was that they kept you.
Yes.
About the whole thing is where everything.
Yes.
So if we can do that without notifying so much, but they.
Yes.
Can in and see that they can.
Where they can see the big picture,
I think that would be.
that would be effective.
Yeah.
Now, we know that property, go ahead, Rebecca.
Oh yes, also on the onboarding date tracker and property turn, there are comments there that would be updated by Trisha whenever there's already a schedule for any work.
So the onboarding date tracker, this is good.
Owner doesn't have access.
No, owner doesn't have access to that today.
Yeah.
But the onboarding date tracker is something that Dane is looking at multiple times a day. Let's put a pin in that for a moment.
Yeah.
Because it is one of the core things that we can improve about our process, right? Is giving the owner the right information at the right time to validate that we're doing what we said we were going to do, so build trust and help them feel confident, right? Let's talk about the onboarding date tracker for a moment. Dane, can you share what that is? Just tell everybody that doesn't know. I don't think Riley and Tara have ever seen the onboarding date tracker.
Well, no, they have.
Oh, they have, okay.
But it just organizes all of the steps that a property goes through. So market,
Okay,
just puts dates in, what the next action needs to be done, and what has been done last.
yep. Why did we Amanda was here before we had an onboarding date tracker. Why did we create an onboarding date tracker?
Because Amanda couldn't handle not having control.
Oh. Yes,
And that way we're able to track how long is this process taking? Is it on track or is it off track? In a way that we couldn't track in lead center.
that's right. We have a really good process software. But that process software does not roll up everything into one big dashboard, one big visual that lets us very quickly identify of all the properties in the onboarding process, which ones are falling behind. And so what we did is we programmed a spreadsheet that would change different colors if things were not moving forward as quickly as they should, so that somebody, Dane owns the onboarding date tracker. It's his thing. And by the way, the onboarding date tracker is our most powerful tool to keep vacancy loss to a minimum. That's the goal. The goal is, if we're using the onboarding date tracker like it should be, and Dane's owning it, and he's moving things along, he's a project manager behind the scenes for the onboarding process right now. And if he's moving things along as quickly as they can, the owners are saving hundreds of dollars in lost days because it's moving forward quickly.
If part of our intro call is to create a feeling of trust, and the owner didn't even trust us to take care of the turn, do we trust them that all of the items on the sheets are taken care of? Is this like a red flag, letting us know that once the property is, if there's already tenant at the property, that they're going to be micromanaging the work orders?
You saying they do all the maintenance?
I think there's two parts to your question, Rebecca. We do trust that the owner has completed what they said they're going to a point, because then we will go and do a follow-up inspection before we'll say, okay, I'm gonna start the marketing now. We will do that follow-up to make sure everything is completed. Our process breaks down a little bit at that point, because then if there was something left undone, do we then let the owner have the opportunity to go back and do it, or do we take over? And sometimes it goes one way, sometimes it goes the other. So that's where the process breaks down a little bit. The process is great right now that we do the follow-up, but it's then what happens after, that's where it gets dicey. And then to your point, Rebecca, if a tenant moves in and we're like, hey, we had already addressed that in the rent ready and the owner did the work and that wasn't caught, yes, that's a whole nother issue.
But most of the time, in my experience, most owners that did their own turn are the same owners that would complain about tenants creating work orders. They do not even support our recommendation, and they would.
Yeah.
I think it's a red flag when an owner wants to do their own work and the red flag says on it cheap. Right, like that owner is saying, I'm cheap, I'm cheap, I'm cheap. I'm gonna do the work myself. We're following up, yes, it looks like they did put the door stops on, they fixed the window, whatever it is, but it doesn't mean the work was done by a professional vendor. It was done cheaply by an owner.
Can we pause right here and talk about this a little bit? I'm trying to make a list of the most important challenges we have in our onboarding process so that we can create solutions for these right now. An owner, one of the most powerful transformations our owners go through, I'm gonna state it positively. One of the most powerful positive transformations our owners go through after working with us for a while, and some of them have it from day one, is trusting our process and being hands-off and letting us do the job they hired us to do, especially about getting their property ready.
owners undervalue their time and the time, their personal time, and the time they lose to vacancy loss. They vastly underestimate those things. One of the most benevolent things we could do, one of the most positively contributing things we can do to an owner's mindset in the beginning of our relationship is to inspire them, empower them to understand the time, their time and vacancy loss, because what owners overly focus on is the actual dollar cost they have to pay somebody else to do something at their property. They'd rather strap on their tool belt or surf Craigslist and find a lower cost. It's tripping over dollars to pick up dimes, right? If you think like a business owner and you understand the tremendous value of time, and that you're losing $80 a day on average by being the handyman yourself and not doing a great job at it. Because let's be honest, the guys we have access to that can do home repair now at a very affordable rate are worlds better than your average do-it-yourself homeowner. The homeowner will get burned out when they don't realize they're going to get burned out. They will cut corners and buy cheap materials because they don't know what the best materials are. They're giving themselves a job for which they're vastly underqualified and for which they're gonna injure themselves, cause more money, more headaches, more time. It's gonna cost us more time to go follow up on their work. It's gonna cause a poor moving experience. So it's one of the, if there was one thing we could do that would make everything else easier or irrelevant, it would be to inspire the owners to completely turn over property turns to us, rent ready turns.
What does that all come back to?
Trust, yeah.
Communication and education.
Being a teacher.
Yeah.
Trusting us that we can do that.
Should we create some videos around this?
Maybe.
The owners will watch them, but when you're on the phone live with owner, that is so much more powerful than anything you put to them in writing or in video form, right?
Yeah, which, can I?
Yes.
So, I don't need to write, but the whole property turn, like, is a complex process and has a lot of things that have to happen. And to try to make this, like, to me, what I see as the easiest improvement is in the inspection, communicating with the owner and getting them to approve it. And that's where, like, we're going like a week, sometimes a couple weeks in that, where I think it would be really easy to make that even a single day. Like, because if you guys do on the iPad, you're doing your inspection, right? And you're already writing it all out there. If you can send that to the owner and then someone does an intro call with them that same day that you did the inspection, and we can talk them through it and educate them on the why and how much they can save by just kind of letting us handle it and helping them understand that if there's a like that door lock that's $75 and they're like, why is it $75? Well, it's like, well, if we have to replace it, but we might not have to, and just kind of helping them understand and feel comfortable with saying yes, where they're not feeling like, I don't want to commit to spending $75 for a loose door handle, and earning that trust and getting them to commit to it and hopefully fund that account the next day. I mean, that could all be compressed like huge into one day or a couple days. And that feels like the easiest thing to make efficient right now.
Dane, what's the average time from that Riley just talked about, the rent ready process is taking from what point to owner approval? Where we just talk,
being performed and then them approving.
yeah, from rent ready inspection being performed and then approving the rent ready scope. What's the average time right now?
Probably 4 business days. And no, if you're including them approving it,
it's sometimes pretty long.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just sit there and kind of.
It's
like,
analysis
look at it.
paralysis.
It is. They open it and they are like, whoa, and they don't understand, they just got hit with like. My customer Marcella, who is great because she is. She has a very high standard, but she's also really good at communicating and understanding like. Where there was breakdowns, and she talked to me about what happened with the rent ready process. And she said she felt like when she was first handed off, there was high touch, they had good communication with Amanda, introing her into what was gonna happen, and then after the rent ready got sent to her, it was $3,500. And she got some follow-up emails, but no one like called her to talk her through it. And so on our side, we thought she was just ignoring us because she wasn't responding to the follow-up emails. And on her side, she was like freaking out and then going and getting quotes to try to compare to what we had quoted, doing work herself. It took her like 2 weeks longer than it should have. And she got frustrated. She was like painting the wall herself. She called me on a Sunday and was like stressed out. It all could have been avoided if we talked her through and helped her make that decision, like as soon as we sent her the rent ready, and earned that trust for us to handle it for her.
So what I'm hearing is. Going out and doing a rent ready inspection quickly, typing up a very detailed report, including a video link, these are good things that we do.
Yes.
Sending it to the owner and letting it go into a black hole of analysis paralysis, cheap mindset, potentially, fear of messing up, am I being taken advantage of, all of this spinning that's going on in the owner's mind, we're not owning that. We're just kind of letting it be. So that's not ideal.
I think anything that we tell them needs to be fixed should have a photo or a video, which you
We do have the video.
Right. I think it might be beneficial to just have a photo next to whatever item, if that was something.
We're talking about a concept art here.
Yeah.
So don't immediately say, no, that's impossible. Yeah.
Just because so many people don't watch the video, and if they see a line item, it's like $300, fix this wall, and there's just a picture of a messed up wall.
That's more compelling.
Anyway, but
Or a
That's
link,
detail.
or the text is a link to the point in the video.
yeah,
Because when somebody sees a link, they'll click and they'll be like, oh, this video is worth watching. This kind of writes to the point.
yeah. I like that. I think it's harder to line it all up and figure out where those are versus if you're already
Yes.
listing a thing, just getting add photo, take a photo. But anyways. But yeah, talking them through that and really helping them understand, like, so they don't have to feel like they need to verify, is it actually broken? And if we can build trust in educating them, like, we do this all the time. We know what things should cost. You don't need to go get 3 quotes on what it costs to paint a wall. Like, this is generally what it should cost. If it's less, then you'll pay less, but you know, this is just an approval to move forward. And if, you know, to get the work done, and then once the final cost comes in, that's what you pay. Kind of just educating them on the whole thing and making them feel comfortable with it is really important.
It's interesting when you said that because of course, I start thinking of what's a good solution to this, what's a good solution? And so I wonder if, just throwing spaghetti at the wall, when they do the video, if they're talking to the owner at that time, like, I noticed on this wall in the south side of the living room, it looks like there was a previous patch job that was done poorly, blah, 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 explain that,
That's brilliant.
right? Instead of then typing it, and then the owner's trying to understand it, and where is that, what are they talking about, and I mean, they've already identified the issue, so I don't know, it just seemed like, rather than a whole nother.
We have tried that before. What ended up happening was that the videos got really long, because usually as soon as you start talking, the
Right.
videos get really long. And some of the things said when you watch them, as a manager, watch them, you're like,
Don't say that.
yes. That's not the right way you say it, that's not the right recommendation, why are you saying it like that? So to try to bring some uniformity to the process, we said, let the video do the talking, just zoom in on anything that catches your eye, and then the report write-up will do it. So definitely, that's what I used to do when I did the videos. It was really compelling, but I'm a much more skilled, like I know exactly how to phrase it and describe it, but still the videos got like 20 minutes long,
Yeah.
and then nobody watched them, or there's less likely. So yeah, it's good spaghetti on the wall, and we need more spaghetti on the wall. Okay, do we agree? We're not gonna be able to solve the whole world's problems today in this one meeting, but do we agree that these 5 things should be our focus for the onboarding improvement? If we were to choose one of those as the most important, what would it be?
Right now, based on my experience the last 5 to 10 clients that I've gone through this already with, feels like just holding their hand through the making process of approving the rent ready. We just need to get them, they just made the decision to go with us, and then just getting them to understand that that is the right choice to move forward, and not feel like they need to spend a week thinking about it and getting other quotes and checking, does that really need to be done? And, you know, like you said, it's decision paralysis, and getting them across that line, then we can focus on actually getting work done, which is, you know, that realistically is the hard part, but we have great people. What becomes the hard part is what should be easy, which is just getting the owner to decide if they move forward or if they try to handle this thing themselves. And it feels like an easily solvable problem.
Okay, do we have a vote? Is that the one thing of those 5 things? Is that the one thing that if it was done better would make everything else easier or irrelevant?
I have a difference of opinion there. That's important. I'm not taking anything away from that, right? But if we're looking at this in terms of what can we affect, what's the most important thing that we can affect fastest? High confidence in a call involves a process change and identifying whose responsibility it is, or I shouldn't say who and what, but where that responsibility lies. So there's a lot of stuff involved in that. However, I feel if we could take a component of that, the reason why they feel like they got to get really involved in that is because that trust level isn't built yet. Because the expectations weren't spelled out clearly, right? So if who's ever doing an intro call can insert some more language, or we can build the trust factor with the lower vacancy, the higher rent, the higher retention, minimize the cost. Teach them so that when they do get that report, well, I was told there's a standard they're gonna put the property at. I was told we have quality vendors that know what they're doing, they can do it at a reasonable price, quicker than I can. If that expectation is already set, then that report doesn't hurt as much.
What if the owner saw a series of 3 videos, one a day, while they were waiting for the rent ready report to come back to them, that reinforced those ideas, that reinforced the idea of, you know, here's our objectives right now for you. Here's how trusting Mark Brower Properties to handle this whole process for you is going to really go well. Here's how, when you see the pricing on your rent ready report, it's not final pricing, it's our best guess. It could come in lower. Like, if we could dispel some of these mindset blockers that causes them to spin, you're persuading, or you're setting the stage for more effective interaction once that report hits. It's harder to chase it after it comes in. Boom. Oh, I'm having a reaction to this. Oh, don't worry. Let me walk you through this. Like, it's easy. Like, the better you set that up, the more smooth it's going to be. So that's your point.
Just a better onboarding intro call that is more really teaching and helping inspire
The right mindset for what's about to come next.
I think as far as just a process thing that can help us compress the time between the actual inspection and sending out the rent ready, is there's a lot of, it seems like usually it's just like waiting on an estimate or something, or like, most things are in there, but I'm waiting to, talk to Les about what this would cost or something like that.
Yeah.
And are most things like, okay, you have like a standard estimated price for like how many walls you can paint and you just kind of count in times and stuff like that.
The only reason we would need to go to less would be anything like really big or unusual. So like if there's like a lot of drywall work that needs to be done, I'll go and talk to them, be like, hey, this is what I think it's gonna be, but he has a better idea of that. Like when we had the fence posts, I wouldn't know the price of that originally when we first talked about it. So things like that are unusual out of like the regular just paints or fix a sink stopper, then that's when I'm going as. But they usually shouldn't take up until like extra load.
So I'm gonna insert a really quick comment that relates to this. If Dane is the keeper of the onboarding date tracker, like Dane's job is to move things through the process as quickly as possible. I would like to, that person in that role needs to be empowered to call some audibles occasionally. Like if let's say hypothetically, Les was absolutely drowning in 4 mold issues and starting a company with 5 recent hires, and he doesn't get to a rent ready review like quickly. Someone needs to make the decision that, hey, Les hasn't gotten to this. I cannot let this hold up the process anymore. I'm not going to let this sit for 2 to 3 days,
Especially on Friday.
especially on a Friday, on like a 3-day weekend. This is going to go out to the owner. I'm making that judgment call. They needs to be empowered to take that risk and make that call and push that out. The other thing that role needs to be empowered to do is anytime an owner emails in, he acknowledges it immediately. Hey, I got your email. I'm on top of this. I'm going to follow up. I'm going to make sure that it happens. Instead of just messaging like a field person or messaging Les or messaging somebody else. Hey, Dan, you can kind of call this owner back. No. True to our commitment in Help Scout communication, generally speaking, it needs to be acknowledged, and there needs to be a high confidence. I got you. Like, and Dane needs to be that person because he's the keeper of that whole timeline. So I'd like to propose that Dane has broad authority to do those 2 things, to call an audible and make things sure something is moving forward. If it's stalled out, regardless of the cause, cut a corner if you need to, because the stakes are too high. And I don't want to trample on a man is managing this process. So the subject and man says something different, but we are going to lose the confidence of an owner if we don't do what we say we're going to do. And we're going to lose the confidence of them if they reach out, that's already a red flag. They shouldn't be reaching out. Let's agree that's like not great. But if they do reach out, it needs an immediate acknowledgement and immediate like, hey, I'm on this. I see where this is at. I'm going to follow through, make sure that this moves forward. If you don't hear back, by X date, feel free to ping me directly. Here's how you get in touch with me directly. Something like that can decompress that feeling of anxiety significantly. And Dane, just a pro tip on that, instead of saying, I will reach out to you tomorrow to make sure that you know that this is moving forward. I've learned that if I say, hey, I'm going to get on this right now, if you don't hear by the end of the day tomorrow and you feel confidence moving forward, feel free to reach back out to me, because then you're outsourcing the follow-up in still a high confidence manner. You can outsource that to the client a little bit.
So when I also, we decided, right, that someone's gonna call the owner basically every time we're gonna report sent to them.
I don't think we've decided that yet, but we're talking about it. We're talking about that.
So part of my perspective is if we've already if the owner has already signed up with us and said, yes, I want your service, did we not already convince them, or should we not have already convinced them that they're buying into our whole process? Instead of being kind of reactive and saying, okay, so now here's your rent ready, and it's $2,500, and now I need you to buy into this process. I feel like they should have already been sold on the process in that teaching kind of category ahead of time. That's how we got them to sign, right? Was
Absolutely. And as I have gone through this now, you know, and learned more about the what is happening during the rent ready, I have put more focus on educating them, and instead of leaving the door open for like, yeah, if your property needs anything, like I'm more like, we will put together a list of what your property needs, and being a lot more clear and setting that expectation. But it does not matter how, like, people will always be like, yeah, I can't imagine what it would need.
Yeah.
They like,
You're like, just one thing, I think, you know.
My house is great, and I walk in there and I'm like, no.
That's so
Yeah. It's like, it doesn't matter, it's even like that woman that I said, I don't think we're a good fit, was because she didn't wanna fix the sprinklers in the backyard, and she didn't wanna take out the dead grass, she didn't wanna put in turf, she was like, they want her if they want to with those hose. And I was like, all right, well, I don't think it'd be a good fit, because, you know, we expect. Yeah, it's like and she was like, well, I'll decide if we want to put in the sprinklers, and I was like, no, but before this happens, she's like, no, it's only that, that's the only thing that's gonna come up. Okay, well, that only came up because I started like pointing out some things that it just came up by chance, and we started talking about the sprinklers,
it's like, does she really think, yeah, who wants to stand out there and just water everything?
It's not a sustainable
Oh, yeah.
outcome. So good job. She wasn't a good fit for us. We weren't a good fit for her. So the quicker we can find that out, the better.
Yeah.
Okay, so analysis paralysis, FOMO, fear of messing up, cheap mindset, my house is great and it's just a rental. These are the mindsets that we have to do battle with. And I'm gonna acknowledge Bradley's point. The salespeople, while they're courting this, the scope of building confidence about hiring Mark Brower properties is so much bigger than that, that even if they do an effective job talking about that at some point before they sign, it has to be reinforced later. I just can't see that like going, for some people really business minded, our ideal client, it will absolutely translate all the way through, and they'll be like, rent ready, I'm so grateful you guys are on this. I already know that pricing is reasonable. Here's the money. Thank you so much. This is easier than I thought it would be. That's like maybe 10-20% of the time. 80-90% of the time, it's like, what? Costs are what? Like, people have no frame of reference. We got to keep that in mind. Last 3 years, things almost doubled in cost, almost everything, right? So it's not just that they have a cheap mindset, it's that they don't have a current mindset about costs and about, you know, what they're losing by trying to do this more cheaply. And so they could great example, Riley. This one client had to go out to get three competing quotes for everything that we told her just because she didn't know us well enough. Yeah. We can save people from that. Okay, we got to wrap this up, and let's talk about something actionable. I think these two areas of focus are absolutely critical that we're talking about. This better onboarding intro call where we become a teacher, a guide, and the high touch. Hey, here's your rent ready report. And you should, here's your rent ready report, trust us. We'll get you to the finish line, and we'll get you there fast, and if you focus on the big picture, you will save more money by letting us handle this. So, okay. Now, what's the future? Like, who can be the owner of this? Dane owns the timing of moving things forward, and he has more authority now to make sure that they move forward, and the owners get high touch 100%. Who owns these two really important operation touch points. Now, I'm not saying what we have the capability of doing today, but what's the future ideal scenario? That there is a person. Is it the same person that handles this and this, so there's continuity? That would make the
They
most
would
sense.
feel,
It would make them, well, the whole thing is feeling.
yeah, that they're like, okay, I know you.
Hey, regardless whether we have the tools and the resources to do it today, my feeling is. This call and this call are the two most important operational things that happen during the onboarding process. And if they can be done by the same really friendly, super intelligent person that inspires a lot of trust, that will really help our onboarding process. And maybe it goes round robin. Maybe we don't have the capacity that one team member handles all these calls. Maybe it round robins from Amanda to Les to me, and we all become super skilled at those calls. And we take a third of the new accounts that are coming on, because we're just so blessed right now to have lots of people hiring us, and that's a great thing.
Maybe it's good too, because you guys have both mindsets, sales and ops, to know how to talk to people into kind of transitioning, but you have just one mindset, you never with the other, it is too different. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
You can understand both sides of it.
absolutely. Yeah, Amanda and I both, and Les, all three of us understand sales and operations to a degree. So we're all qualified to do those calls. Diane is qualified to do the call. Rich is qualified to do the call. So. And the other thing is, if we leverage technology, if we do some really impactful short videos that reinforce these calls, they don't have to take a long time. I think the one that could take the longest, well, I don't know. I haven't made the calls for a while, but this one, really holding somebody's hand through that report. Go ahead, Brad.
We do a really, really, really good job before that report.
Should be an afterthought.
Should be an afterthought.
A potential time saver is to do a Zoom video walkthrough of the rent ready. Because that way you have an opportunity to explain some of the items without getting bogged down with a lot of the client's questions, and hopefully do a good enough job in 2 minutes or 3 minutes that great idea. That you kind of answer all the questions.
What about disconnecting it?
So
The video thing at the top says, how do I understand this? It tells you.
Let's talk about the customer journey for a moment. What's the reality when somebody gets a rent ready report? What is their behavior?
Open it up, look at the bottom.
Open it up, scroll right to the bottom, and overreact at the cost.
Yep. I want to do it. Oh, let's give it back. Like,
Is that the way we want it to go?
no. Maybe something in the email. prior.
What if every time you guys got a new client sales call, the first thing out of your mouth was, we charge this,
Yeah.
and that was it?
Yeah.
Are we doing our clients a disservice in the way we're presenting the investment opportunity they have to make in their rental property? Thanks, Smiley. You got an idea? Oh, I was doing a happy frown.
Yeah, I mean, when they're scrolling, if they scroll to the wrong, right, they're gonna scroll, right?
It's absolutely
Just
what
wait
they're
to
gonna do.
get the position is.
100%.
Like how you set it
How
up.
much does this hit my pocketbook?
Right,
Immediately.
right.
I'm like, oh, that's too much money. That's the first conclusion.
Right.
Except for 10% of our clients who are the ideal clients that are like, I have that money. I knew it was going to take something to invest in the property. I'm so glad they're this detailed. This is amazing.
What's just a curious question? What do we think percentages of our clients that are entrepreneurs versus just, hey, I had, I lived in,
20% or less are ideal entrepreneur, business-minded investors that
they
are,
automatically go to.
they get it.
I know, I'm spending money, but what's the return on investment?
Yes, 100%.
The other 80% will get the, I think, what we're trying
Yes.
to decide how we.
What, we want to inspire them to have the transformational experience of thinking like an entrepreneur and an investor and a business owner.
And I would say of those 20%, half of them are early on in their rental investment careers, and they still are thinking about things that they can do themselves and how they can save money and trying to, you know, they're kind of being a little too hands-on to achieve. The other 10% are experienced and they understand what you need to put into the property.
So how do we best serve? How do we add the most value to the 90% of our clients?
Are we talking concept art right now? Or are we talking?
Whatever we want, like,
I almost envision an owner portal that's specifically geared towards onboarding, onboarding, ready, where there's smaller little videos of each part of that step of the process. That they can sort of self-educate as often as they want. That answers a lot of that, that builds value. Here's a.
They can't open it
Other
on
than-
video.
Other than us having.
we had that, remember?
Make a bunch of phone calls.
Why did we abandon that?
I don't think we abandoned it as much as we realized that it wasn't something we could create.
You like how many times you got it touched, right?
So-
That was create a drip,
So
part of the campaign, a ticket, and then there's a link that includes a video of that process.
we had a separate, an entirely, because we don't have enough software applications. We did have another one that we used that was its own project management software where an owner got a login and they had specific videos that talked about what's coming next and what to expect.
And about 3% of our owners actually engaged with
It was
it.
like pretty low adoption, right? I never saw those stats, but I trust what you're saying. And so it was like, we didn't do it effectively enough, right? Or it just wasn't compelling enough that the owner, now I gotta log into this system. Okay, is that the system I log into in the future to get my owner statements? No, it's a different system. And so it was kind of its own thing that guided somebody through the onboarding, but it wasn't integrated. So if it could be fully integrated into what we already have, that would be cool.
The Rocket mortgage example.
Yes.
Assuming that those were emails you got. That here's the
Yeah.
next step of the process, right?
Not only emails, but I could log into my Rocket Mortgage account
Yeah.
and it showed me all the steps and exactly where I was at and what was gonna happen next and by when.
Yeah,
Right.
better mortgages that too.
So on that page, you can have. Here's a link of this part of the process and an email, and you just got a drip campaign generated by
What
the
if-
system.
What if named onboarding date tracker as he moved things along? It auto-populated
Yeah.
something in an owner's
Yeah.
portal that showed them, here's where you're at. Here's the amount of money you're losing by overthinking your rent ready turn on a
Yes.
daily basis. Well, you know what's interesting about that? Sorry, I'm gonna riff a little bit, is you could say, you could show the owner, you could help them see the value, the time value of money. Right? And you can do it in a positive way. You can say total savings. The average property takes 30 days to turn and become rent ready and get on the market. Your total estimated, which is a cost of X, your total estimated savings by following our process is Y, and it's a green thing. But every day that they take to, you know, to slow the process down, that number starts shrinking. It's like, we want to help maximize your savings here. I don't know, it's just an idea.
And then Rich would be here saying right now, oh, but then when we make a mistake, then they're gonna throw it out, and they're gonna want us to.
Reimburse them,
Right.
yes.
Compensation.
You know, it's interesting that is, that's something I always think about. Anytime we make a mistake that delays an owner's revenue creating
Yeah.
possibility, I feel some responsibility for that. And you cringe because that money starts accruing very rapidly.
Yeah.
And so we do appreciate the grace that our owners extend us for occasional little mistakes here and there that delay things 2, 3, 4 days at a time. If our owners hardcore held us accountable to every single delay and they expected us to reimburse them, I'm not sure that would be a win for us. But we can dare ourselves to take that level of extreme ownership and feel the pain that they're feeling, right? Okay, what are we gonna do? One thing I've learned about Amanda is her very smart brain works in a way where she likes to let this sink in for a while. She doesn't want to make a decision right now. And so I definitely want her input on what we do next. So I propose we leave this on the board. We let this simmer for a day or two, and then we figure out what our action items should be. But it's clear to me, and I would really appreciate the time we spent together to figure out that this is a massive opportunity to create value for our clients. And I like us to think about everything we do is how can we create more value for our clients? We can be better teachers and set better expectations and help warn them about the enemy mindsets that they might be dealing with when we get to the next all important step of the rent ready inspection, so that they're already preconditioned to it. We could send them a short series of 3 or 4 videos that help address this and reinforce this. And then we may be able to deliver the rent ready inspection report in a different format that helps them not scroll right to the bottom and overreact to a number, but actually see the benefit of investing in their property. If we could change the lens to, hey, this is what we think an investment in these things will do for you, as opposed to here's just a cost, you have to open your wallet, and yeah, that vacation you thought you were taking this summer, nope, it's going into your rental property, which always looked like that while you lived there. And it's really hard, right? Really hard to think about that.
Well, it's not even like when I make those calls, I'm not explaining the importance of stretching the carpet. I'm explaining the importance of investing in their property to get it to the right standards, to reduce their vacancy loss, to, you know, get that high level, that it's the right thing to do to get the right tenant and do it as quickly as possible.
Yeah, but also
So-
one of the main blockers for people is the cost.
And
They
why is
want-
it necessary?
They, yeah,
I don't know, we're supposed to do it.
Yeah, there's 2 aspects to it here. There's one, convincing them that it's worth doing. And 2, convincing them that the price that is on there is a fair price and that it's worth having us do it for them.
I've gotten a lot of like feedback with telling them, like, the way you're presenting the property is the way they're gonna treat your property. How do you want it, how do you know, you're presenting it like a slumlord, they're gonna treat it like that. You want your property, them to exit the same way they went in, thinking, I need to respect this place because they respect it, I came in here, I wanna leave it that way. That's kind of what you want, what I've been telling them, like, so you gotta present it the way you want them to treat it.
I think that is this worth doing? If they can easily see a photo of whatever it is that is damaged and needing repair, that's an easy connection for them.
Often,
They would watch it,
often they used to live there.
you know?
Just to remind you, most of them used to live there.
Everyone was like, oh, there's a video, I can see that, it literally says it right across the top, click here to watch the video. And then they're gonna walk through and show you everything they looked at and why they, like, what's wrong with it. But if you watch it, you'll see.
Is it worth doing? And this is a great price. Honestly, our clients don't know if it's worth doing. They've never rented their house before. They tolerated while they lived there, but the owner mindset is very different than a resident mindset. The owner mindset is like, I'll put up with this because if I had to pay for this to be fixed, I'd rather spend that money elsewhere. I will put up with this. That is not the resident mindset.
And I think that's how we previously had said, this is kind of a sales activity, is we're selling them on the idea. And so that's how it ended up back in the sales lab was. It's a kind of a convincing, did we set that expectation in the first place? Here it is now, and so that's how it ended back with sales.
Well, I've 3 years ago, 2 years ago, I was doing sales myself and the entire onboarding process myself for every single new account. So it wasn't this organized the way we have it now, but I was very effectively doing the whole thing and getting it all the way to being on the market before I handed it off to Rich to do weekly reports. So that is a possibility. And you guys are qualified to have those conversations as salespeople. And the only thing we're losing is, well, wait a second. Am I getting a really good transition to operations, or are they just gonna keep calling me forever?
And then you have this calls.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna suggest, and my view is it may not be ideal, even though salespeople are qualified to do this, and they should be willing to fill in a pinch when we have a capacity issue. It's probably not the ideal concept car scenario, but it's kind of where we're at right now. It's like, hey, who can help with this? You know, things have been escalating up to. Rebecca, you've been very quiet. What can you add to this discussion? Like, what have you seen work well? What you've done a lot of onboarding in the past. Is there something we're missing that you would like to add?
I think pretty much everything has been said. Consistency and setting proper expectations and very good communications with the owner. I think those were like the main.
Yeah, these are the main things. All right. So how are we gonna wrap this up? So we do it Thursday. We're gonna reconvene Thursday. Thursday afternoon at like 2:30. How about that? You guys good?
Yeah, let me work.
Yeah. If you need to zoom in, we can zoom in. Please think about this. Take a picture with your phone, whatever we need to do. Thank you for recording, Rebecca.